From the campus of Rio Salado College, this is a TransBorder Unit live town hall broadcast. It's a production of KJZZ Phoenix. I am Jim Paluzzi, and we say good evening to our live audience here in the Rio Salado College Conference Center. And we also welcome our worldwide audience watching on TV, on your computer, on the KJZZ YouTube channel. So wherever you are right now, good day to you. Nearly 5 years ago, KJZZ launched an experiment. It's a new concept. It asked the question, what do community leaders and journalists have in common? What makes them different? We came to the conclusion that both journalists and community leaders had very similar skills. Both are insightful, curious, great investigators, analytical, great storytellers. At the same time, we recognize that journalists and community leaders have considerably different life experiences. They may observe the same things, but they understand them from different perspectives. So we wondered what would happen if we combined these two groups of professionals, took them on location to research several stories. Last year, we reported from Colombia. This year, from the Dominican Republic. So we took two reporters, Mariana Dale from our KJZZ East Valley Bureau here in Tempe, and Rodrigo Cervantes, chief of our KJZZ Mexico City Bureau, put them under the editorial guidance of our veteran journalist, Rick Lewis. You may not have heard of him, but you've heard of what he has done, because among his many accomplishments, he served as deputy news director for National Public Radio and created a public radio program you may have heard called Marketplace. So our editorial team was then joined in the Dominican Republic by our three outstanding community leaders. Maria Harper Marinac is chancellor of the Maricopa Community College District, to which KJZZ is licensed. Dr. Harper Marinac is a career educator, innovator, higher education administrator with a deep-seated commitment to inspiring lifelong education. She's also Dominicana, so she was able to provide our team with a deeper native understanding of the Dominican culture. And welcome.
Thank you, Jim.
Joining Dr. Harper Marinac is Lisa Urias, President and CEO of Urias Communications, an award-winning full-service advertising and public relations agency that is focusing on the burgeoning Hispanic markets of the United States. She is a proud fourth-generation Arizona Latina. Welcome to you, Lisa.
Thank you.
And last but not least, Josh Rarich is Senior Vice President for Communications with the Arizona Diamondbacks. In this role, he is responsible for the internal and external communication efforts of this Major League Baseball organization. He joined the KJZZ TransBorder team as an alum in the Dominican Republic. And welcome, Josh.
Thank you.
So all of you now are going to really get an exposure to what happens when we experiment putting leaders and journalists together on the same project. We took this team of journalists and community leaders into the Dominican Republic, a country that is beyond our border, but has significant connections to Arizona. And while we can only present a few of the stories that we worked on during our time there, I believe you will find that in this broadcast, the rest of our work will be very much available to you if you simply go to the KJZZ TransBorder website, transborder.kjzz.org. Throughout this broadcast, by the way, you will be able to ask questions whether you are here in the audience or participating around the world on our YouTube channel. You can offer comments on what you're about to see and hear. You may have questions, you may have comments. Please use those cards in front of you to write them. Our spotters will bring them to us, and we will get to them as fast as we can. You can, if you are in the YouTube land, email us at this address at any time during the broadcast, transborder.kjzz.org. So let's begin. Every Major League Baseball team has an academy on the Dominican Republic, or in the Dominican Republic on the island of Hispaniola. They're training young baseball players as young as 16 years of age. These boys come from the Dominican Republic as well as several other Caribbean countries. As the TransBorder unit visited these facilities, it became clear that these MLB academies may be training boys to play baseball. But there's nothing in this that's like summer camp. This is a business, and it's a big business. Our first report from Mariana Dale looks at how Major League Baseball teams mine talent in the Dominican Republic. And in many ways, it's just like mining any precious gem. You see, these baseball players need lots of polishing before they are ready to play in the big leagues. And several of these baseball academies, the polishing isn't just on the field, it's in the classroom as well. And a note to our audience, the stories that you're about to see may sound familiar to you. That's because all of them aired originally on the radio on KJZZ. Let's watch.
At any one time, there are about 1,000 young men training at MLB camps about an hour outside the Dominican Republic's capital. Just 5% will ever make it to the major leagues. 20-year-old shortstop Hansel Moreno hopes to make the cut, which means working from sunrise to sunset at the Mets Academy.
So on a typical day, we get up early and head down to the gym. Then we go have breakfast and stretch out. Next, we start practicing fundamentals and go through a batting routine. And after finishing, we go up to the academy. It's the same thing day after day.
The players also spend about 12 mandatory hours a week in the classroom. It's a change the Mets made back in 2006. Academy head Juan Henderson says it was difficult to explain to the baseball-obsessed young men.
You have to continue school here. What? But I quit school to play baseball and then I have to go back to... And then we explain it. Hey, we explain what we do here and then the family like it.
The academy has a handful of classrooms and a computer lab where players learn math, writing, science, and English.
We really believe that a better educated player have better chances to succeed.
The idea is spreading. Now almost half of major league teams offer players the chance to work toward their high school diploma. Rafael Perez, a former pro who heads the major league operations in the DR, says a few years ago, only 6 teams offered the path to a diploma.
We realized there is a connection. Reading and writing take you to learn math. Math help you with critical thinking. And critical thinking is the essence to any athlete. You have to have the ability to make decisions in a split of a second.
And the chances are many Dominican players are lacking those basic skills. UNICEF estimates only 57% of young men there ever enroll in high school. Some players don't even have a 6th grade education.
The country as a whole has a big issue with education. I mean, and players are just part of the population. It's not like they're worse or better, they're just part of it.
Perez says the MLB won't mandate that the teams educate players, but he predicts more will start programs.
We're not in the business of education, but education makes sense, for our business.
Martin Valerio of the Seattle Mariners says his team and a few others allow players to continue taking classes even if they're cut.
They have with us the chance to still doing like high school program of that, but they don't come back. That's rare.
It's rare because released players can't live at the academy while they continue their classes. They're not making any money from the team, and home is likely far away. The reality is that most players leave the academies without a job and little idea of what to do next. Those who do manage to scrape together enough classes for a diploma are treated to the pomp and circumstance of graduation. 6 Arizona Diamondbacks ballplayers donned black motorboards and gowns in the humid tropical heat to receive their diplomas this year. Merquis Montero is the second person in his family after his brother to graduate. He says he feels good. Thank God.
For the graduation at the Arizona Diamondbacks, they've put a lot into education. It's gone well for us here.
Montero's career with the D-backs started in 2013, and the next year the pitcher was an all-star in the Dominican Summer League.
I played with Arizona, traveled to the United States, and they told me I was released.
A release is the end of an American baseball career. Montero says he's not entirely sure what he'll do next. He wants to continue his studies, maybe become a doctor or a lawyer. He says he played because he loved the game, but also because
it's a way to help your family quickly with good money.
Montero will now have to transform the diploma in his hands into a career off the field. For the TransBorder unit, Mariana Dale, KJZZ News, Santo Domingo.
Maria, you are an educator. You are a baseball fan. You are from the Dominican Republic. What did you see?
I am. All Dominicans, I think, are baseball fans. As an educator, I think what was most impressive to me was that the academies are making an attempt to not only give them a basic education, in some cases not so basic. We saw some pretty advanced mathematics that they were being taught, but also allowing them to form as engaged citizens. So anything from learning the subjects that would lead to a diploma, to learning how to eat, how to speak in public, how to, in some cases, even how to use a shower, because some of the players come from very small towns in the Dominican Republic. And that's why so many of them haven't had access to a formal education, not because it doesn't exist, but it doesn't exist everywhere on the island. So I think that desire of the teams to allow these young men to form as strong men and have an education that goes beyond what's in the classroom was a part that I found most impressive. But I always think about then what's next. So they have some taste of what life could be like, and then what happens if they get released or they have to go back to their towns. And I wonder whether or not the education will help them get a job and advance in life.
What do you think happens when they go back, when they are released? So many are released, and they go back to their towns. Are they heroes? Are they failures? What's the perception on the island?
I think it depends on where back is. I asked some of them where they came from, and like I said, some of those are small towns. Some of the towns I recognized the names, and quite frankly, there were a couple that as a Dominican, I didn't even know where the town is. So I think it's if they come back and they have a way to make a life and support their families, they'll be heroes. But if they come back and the coming back is interpreted as you didn't make it, then they're failures. You had a chance and you blew it, and I can only imagine what those conversations could be like. So I think it's going to depend on the towns and the environments and the families, so it could go either way. But if you're coming from such a small place and there is no opportunity for employment, then I'm not sure how much of a success that is.
Understood. Lisa, very few civilians get to go behind the scenes in the academies, and you got to see what the reporters saw. What were your impressions having visited both the Mets, the Mariners, and the Diamondbacks? What did you see?
Well, it was fascinating. I mean, first of all, I had no idea that every Major League Baseball team had an academy in the Dominican Republic, and they're actually recruiting from all the Latin American countries. So not just the Dominican Republic, but Venezuela and Mexico, all over the place. So it was really fascinating to see. And as Maria mentioned, it was very encouraging from my perspective to see these young men who had probably very little opportunity other than maybe a chance at baseball, coming into these academies and getting this really great education and really wonderful discipline. I thought it was kind of funny to hear the coaches talk about how, they even take them through nutrition, for example, and they don't want to eat white rice. They don't want to eat brown rice. They want to eat white rice, and they're having to help them understand all kinds of things, but not just about the physical body and about the world of baseball, but also about, what it takes to really make it in the world. And of course, then Randy Johnson was at the Diamondbacks graduation, and so they were super excited about that. And to have Randy Johnson, a Hall of Famer, get up there and tell them, hey, a lot of you aren't going to make it in baseball, but we're here to make sure you're successful on the road, whatever it is that you're going to be doing. I think they have a great, great opportunity ahead of them.
At the Mets Academy, we learned that the Mets hire a full-time sports psychologist.
Mm-hmm. Exactly.
What do you think about that?
Well, I mean, that was fascinating too, because as Maria said, what happens if they don't make it, which the majority of them we know won't make it in the big leagues. So what happens to those young men when they go back to their towns and they have a sports psychologist who works with them and who helps them understand that, you have a privilege in some ways that a lot of other kids don't in this community. And so you need to use it. You need to go on. You need to do something productive now. And it was really wonderful. I think that is also a great benefit that they get.
Yes. Josh, you represent the Diamondbacks, but you're part of an industry that mines this talent and is looking for the best talent. How did you respond to the story?
Well, I think you guys did a great job of capturing kind of the issue that exists of the lack of education, and how do you teach kids who, in some cases, as you heard one of the coaches say, I left school, I don't want to study, I want to actually play baseball. And for us to essentially force it upon them is I guess, strange, but I personally am very proud that we do. It really kind of started at the Diamondbacks from our owner, who just said, I want the best education program that we can have in the Dominican, because the majority of these kids aren't going to make it. So, I guess ultimately I see it as Randy Johnson had a great line at the graduation, and they sprung it on him. He had no idea he was speaking, so I know he didn't plan this. But he said, to all you pitchers out there who think that someday you're going to be like me, your fastball is going to leave you, but I guarantee you your education won't. And I think it hit with some of them that, this is most of them realize the chances are minuscule of them making it, even just to make it to the United States in a minor league team. But I think if we're able to give them a little bit of something to fall back on, it's something we take great pride in as an organization.
Josh, help us understand why Major League Baseball invests so heavily in the Dominican Republic.
Ultimately, it just comes down to talent. At the end of the day, these kids are learning from a very, very young age. They're playing. I have a 6-year-old who has been playing for 3 years, and even that's probably late to start at 3 when you're down there. Everybody is playing down there for their entire life, and we go where the talent is. And if what you're trying to do is win at the Major League level, another great line in that piece was from the gentleman from Major League Baseball who said, we're not in the education business, but education is good for our business. We're in the business of winning. We are in the business of finding the best talent and finding inexpensive labor. And as much as I hate to say it, there's a reason why American companies go to China for labor, because it doesn't cost as much as producing it here. We can sign 20 Dominican kids for, say, $100,000, and they have a $5,000 bonus. You can't sign a kid out of college in the States or out of high school for that amount. So I think that's why you see so much money poured into it. And then ultimately, hopefully, we're also doing right by them with education programs. And then you start to see the fruits of the labor when you get to the big league level, and we've got 4 or 5 Dominicans on our roster, and probably every team across baseball does as well.
So whether a potential player comes from the States or the Caribbean, it's a numbers game. You have to go through many, many players before you find the ones that are the gems.
Yeah, ultimately, if you look at it as 20 Dominican prospects, and maybe, you say 100 Dominican prospects, and maybe 2 or 3 of them are going to make it to the big leagues. 100 American prospects, 2 or 3 of them are going to make it to the big leagues. It is a numbers game, and financially, obviously, these teams they're not nonprofits as much as we do have a great foundation, but that's not what we're in the business of. We obviously are looking for the best possible talent.
And they go home. You've probably followed the stories of some of those, the majority who are released at the graduation ceremony. If we heard it once, we probably heard it 30 times in the graduation ceremony, talking about when you are released.
Yeah. It is somewhat of an inevitability. They all have that dream, and you want them to have that dream, but a lot of them recognize that it's likely going to happen. But we also heard the one gentleman, I think, it talked about he wants to become an engineer or a doctor, and that obviously isn't going to be possible without a basic education. Clearly, you're not going back to whatever town you're from if you don't have an education. So they do recognize it. They do get decent signing bonuses, too. Some of them may sign for $50,000, which may not be anything for a top prospect in the States. But down there, that will go a very, very, very long way.
Thank you, Josh and panelists. Our second story, Arizona's State Bill 1070 and President Donald Trump's immigration directives have found sympathizers in unexpected places, like the Dominican Republic, where hostility towards Haitian immigrants has left a group of people without any nationality at all. We're going to switch now to a story produced by Rodrigo Cervantes, and let's roll that now.
The main streets of Santo Domingo become a party scene during Carnival weekend. The crowds are counting in English for the live music to start. During Carnaval, Dominicanos celebrate their independence, not from Spain, but from neighboring Haiti, which ruled the entire island during the mid-1800s. But behind the festivities, an immigration-related crisis has its own countdown.
The Dominican Republic is known for its beaches and lovely bachata songs, but there's another reality, of course.
Robin Guitard is Amnesty International's campaigner for the Caribbean region.
So we have been working very intensively on this country since 2013, following this constitutional court judgment, which provoked an important human rights crisis and created the largest stateless population in the Americas region.
Haitian migration has been motivated by poverty, political instability, and natural disasters.
Today, we know from the only survey that's been carried out that Haitian migration forms 87% of the total immigrant population here.
That's Bridget Wooding, director of OBNICA, the Caribbean Observatory of Migrants. Like Guitard, she observes that the predicaments that face undocumented Haitians last for generations. Those who are born from undocumented parents are not considered citizens according to Dominican regulations, leaving thousands of people stateless. After international pressure, the government created a temporary program to identify and register undocumented immigrants and stateless people. Some of them did register and get an ID, but others could not make it since they can't prove their identity or origins.
At the moment, they don't have access to too many rights, with the exception, very timidly, of Social Security. So there's still big challenges for the Dominican government.
It is easy to hear Haitian Creole a few steps away from Santo Domingo's downtown in Petit Haiti, where all sorts of things are sold on the streets. The neighborhood is the heart of a Haitian community, and just a few blocks from there, Antonio Paul Emile heads the Dominican Haitian Cultural Center. Paul Emile is a lawyer and used to work as an elected official in the government, but his Dominican documents were revoked.
The authorities question anyone whose documents have what they call weird last names. Just by the way my last names sound, they can tell that I have a foreign descent.
Paul Emile's Dominican passport was seized while he tried to renew it last year. He was born in Dominican Republic from Haitian parents, but he can't fully prove his identity, becoming stateless.
Conservatism here targets immigrants, and there's no distinction between them and their children.
Paul Emile says some Haitians fear racial profiling and deportations in a society where disparagement of Haitians is common. But Dominican conservatives and nationalists oppose citizenship for the migrants and stateless.
What we get from Haiti is not a migration or an exodus, it is an occupation.
Pelegrin Castillo is the vice president of Fuerza Nacional Progresista, one of the main political parties in the Dominican Republic. Castillo says that he sympathizes with Donald Trump's idea of building border walls.
We've been in Arizona and learned how the Nogales port of entry operates. We know that a border with security controls is what really helps coexistence.
Like other conservatives, he thinks that Haitian migrants are taking jobs that impoverished Dominicans deserve. But others hope that the Dominican Republic's approach to immigration doesn't plant a bad seed in Trump's administration. For the TransBorder unit, Rodrigo Cervantes, KJZZ News, Santo Domingo.
And Rodrigo Cervantes is our bureau chief of the KJZZ Mexico City Bureau. We will switch to Mexico City right now. Rodrigo, you are the producer of this story, and you saw firsthand the issues of immigration and discrimination in the Dominican Republic. In Mexico City, you're hearing some very similar stories that exist in the situation between Mexico and the United States. What's your perspective?
That is correct, Jim. And first of all, Buenas tardes, Phoenix, and buenas noches, Mexico, I guess. I always want to say that. But I definitely agree on what you're mentioning. There is parallelism between what's happening in the Dominican Republic and Haiti and the tensions between the United States and Mexico. However, what we're seeing right now in the U.S.-Mexico case is that the tension has been driven not only by immigration, but also by trade, right? As you know, the Donald Trump administration has been constantly talking about renegotiating NAFTA. In fact, President Trump's tweets have affected Mexican economy for a few months. So trade is a big issue. What's happening in the Dominican Republic and in Haiti is that tensions are not really commercially speaking. In fact, the Haitian state is not that close to the crisis or the immigration crisis that Haitians are living in the Dominican Republic. And as we know, Mexico is more involved in the United States on the immigration crisis. So it is precisely this situation where you have like two different governments that are not really taking any ownership of this group of people that are like pretty much living stateless in the Dominican Republic. And that's one of the big differences that we could also see while staying in the Dominican Republic.
Rodrigo, in your story, you interviewed an attorney who lost his passport when it came time for renewal. What does someone in that situation do? Can they still leave the country? How can they travel without a passport internationally?
In fact, for Antonio Polemil, the lawyer that you're talking about, he cannot travel anymore outside of the Dominican Republic, except for Haiti, and that's because he already has like some connections there. He became an advocate precisely of the stateless community and also of the undocumented immigrants from Haiti in the Dominican Republic. And that has helped him get like some connections with Haiti. But other than that, since his passport was revoked, he hasn't been able to travel. And part of the irony of this is that Paul Emile was actually an elected official in the Dominican Republic. And it was until his passport got revoked that he's not being able to participate at all in international congresses and forums.
So why are so many Haitians immigrating to this Dominican Republic?
Yes, in fact, the Haitian population is the largest immigration that the Dominican Republic faces nowadays. Another group that it's growing steadily and in a very interesting way is the Venezuelan population. This is particularly driven by the problems that Venezuela is facing under the government of Nicolás Maduro. But still, the conditions of Venezuelans, as far as we could see, are completely different to the Haitians. And the reason is because a lot of the Venezuelans that are migrating to the Dominican Republic, as it's happening to Mexico or in the United States, they're traveling in different conditions. They're, most of them, investors. They're coming with money. They're also trying to get some other kinds of protections. And that's also helping them navigate through the Dominican system. Now, according to some nonprofit organizations in the Dominican Republic, there's also a huge anti-immigrant fear in the Dominican Republic towards Haitians because of a race. And as we know, like the Haitian population is largely black, and there's a huge tension there because of race, but also because of the origins, because of the language and the culture.
Rodrigo Cervantes, thank you for your report, and buenas noches a ti.
Buenas noches a todos.
Maria, you grew up in the Dominican Republic. You must have a perspective from experience on this.
Yeah, I grew up in the Dominican. I moved to the States when I was 23, a long time ago. And I don't think the issues with the Haitian migration were then what they're now. There was actually little migration into the Dominican Republic when I was growing up, even though it is a nation that is basically a nation of immigrants. Somebody can trace themselves back to a different place. So when I was growing up, it was there's a Spanish community, Italian, we had some Chinese, there was a Jewish community, but not necessarily Haitian. So I see it now when I go that it's not the same conditions that were there when I was growing up. But of course, my whole family is back in the Dominican Republic. So when I go and I try to engage them in the conversation with immigration, it's not any easier than having a conversation here about immigration. So I struggle with that because I tried to understand, the perspective of the people in the Dominican who feel that in many ways the nation is not able to support Dominicans, and why should the Dominican Republic then take care of anybody else's problems, that there's perspective when there are many Dominicans living in poverty and Dominicans who do not have access to jobs or education or some of the things, that we all care about. So I try to be more humane when I go and ask the questions, because obviously being in Arizona, I'm sensitive to that. But there has been a very long, contentious history between the Dominican and Republic and Haiti. And I didn't realize there was another side to the story until I was an adult living in the US, and I read a book about a certain historical moment that I only understood from the Dominican perspective, and I never even thought about what happens on the other side when they look at the same event through their lens. And I actually cried and cried and cried, because it was one of those moments when you realize that we're all humans, and that sometimes we're all fighting for the same thing, through different perspectives. But the issues they have today with the Haitian migration were not always there. That is a more recent development. And again, when I speak with people in the Dominican, that lawyer, I happen to know that person because he was someone that I knew growing up. He's not the only one who feels that way. So I think it's complicated, that there are multiple lenses to see it. But when I go back, I do struggle with trying to understand, why the treatment, and then what happens to people like the lawyer who has been in the Dominican. From the story, I think, was born in the Dominican of Haitian parents, and now he's neither here nor there. It's the same thing we do here, is go back to where? If you grow up here, there is no going back, right? So he may not even speak patois. So it's complicated.
There are connections here and there.
Yes.
Lisa, you were in the office of that attorney. You interviewed that attorney as well. What were your observations?
Well, it was fascinating. I thought Rodrigo did a beautiful job with the interview. But just to hear an attorney who was saying all the things that you hear people from all over the world say, that it wasn't just the color of their skin, it was a particular color of the skin. It was his name, his last name. It was an accent that he had because of growing up with parents who spoke a different language or who had an accent themselves. He talked about the children and how the children could only go up through a certain grade level, and then they couldn't go to school anymore if they didn't have documentation. So it was, it's the same story that you hear all over the world of these problems of migration and the challenges that people are facing with, what to do with world migration. And then, to hear the diputado, the former senator, talk about visiting the Arizona border wall, I thought, oh boy, we're infamous for our border wall. But it was also very interesting to hear him and to hear him talk about how they need more security. So it's a story that's repeating itself globally, and I had no idea that kind of tension was going on there in the Dominican Republic.
Josh, stories always circle around baseball, and I've got to ask, in the Dominican academy system, are there many Haitians or people of Haitian descent?
No, there really aren't. I can only remember one Haitian in all of my time in baseball. I've been in baseball 20 plus years, and I remember one Haitian player. But it's funny because I do view this through a baseball lens, because that's my life. And I remember the first time, probably 15, 20 years ago, we had a pretty uneducated player when I used to work at another team that's in Los Angeles, who told me how much they hated the Haitians. And I had no idea that there was this battle between them, but I remember thinking at the time, it just struck me as so ignorant that he was going to lump in an entire country worth of people he had absolutely no idea other than he probably was raised and told we don't like the Haitians. And so he was just spitting it back out. And it is so commonplace. We see it all the time in the States. And it is. It's what you don't know, you fear. And I think they fear that their jobs are being taken. They fear the unknown. And that's I see it. I see it every day through the Dominican players that I interact with.
Thank you. Thank you. When she was First Lady, Hillary Rodham Clinton said, "If I want to knock a story off the front page, I just change my hairstyle." Hair makes a statement and captures attention in just about any culture. Well, hot off her baseball story, Mariana Dale turned her attention to hair, straight hair, and curls.
My mom had a thick, beautiful, curly fro that I would see in pictures, but then she relaxed her hair and she also started blow drying it straight all her life.
And when Carolina Contreras turned 7, her hair was chemically straightened for the first time. Her mom did it every other month for her entire childhood.
She thought she was doing me a favor. She thought she was making me prettier. And she thought she was preparing me to be more presentable in society.
Still, Carolina was always curious about the soft new growth at the crown of her head, the hair that hadn't been relaxed. So almost 7 years ago, she went natural. And there were a lot of experiments, including some treatments she'd make in the kitchen.
I once tried cucumber with egg. It was really stinky. And I was like, what am I doing? It was also really hard. It was hard because I would look at myself in the mirror and I would be like, who the heck is that? Looking back at me, and she looks weird and she looks like not as feminine as she did with the long silky hair.
She documented her journey in a blog. Natural hair tips in Spanish were hard to find at the time. The DR in particular celebrates smooth, straight hair, pelo lacio.
Hola, ¿cómo están?
Carolina's writing launched Miss Rizzo's Salon, a place where women cut and care for natural hair in Santo Domingo's historic, somewhat hipster Zona Colonial.
Visitamos acá el Salón Mis Rizos.
We visited Mis Rizos Salon to experiment and live through the experience with natural hair.
Dodi de la Cruz brings her daughter Melanie to Miss Rizos.
El estilo que me gusta más es
the style I like the most is curly because it feels free, attracts attention, and people like it.
But this day, Melanie's hair is pulled back in a tight ponytail. Her mom says there was an incident at school recently.
The teacher told her, if you come with curly hair, you cannot enter my class.
Es difícil porque
it's hard because she didn't accept that some feel free to wear their hair how they like it.
This kind of discrimination is not unique. For example, Carolina says she was once turned away at a bar because of her textured style. But some of Carolina's youngest customers, like 12-year-old Nashla Alaya Peralta Garcia, are growing up outside the stereotypes.
It's that for me, bad hair doesn't exist because everyone has a different hair type.
Carolina wants to change the way Dominicans think about natural hair outside the walls of her salon. She's starting young, giving workshops at schools to break down the beauty standards girls see in the media.
When they decided to make this princess the most beautiful, when they decided to put this person to present that TV show, or this person to win Miss Universe, did they call you? Like, no. And you could just see their faces just so like disappointed. And I'm like, well, then you can let them decide what the definition of beautiful is. And it has to come from you.
She wears the title activist and considers her hair a part of her culture, her identity. She's proud of her blackness, and that's a word that not many people embrace in the Dominican Republic. So she translated her message of empowerment and self-love into Yo amo mi pajon. Pajon's a slang word for big hair.
I think it was more powerful for me to teach people to love their pajon than to love their afro or to love their blackness. I mean, they're gonna be like, what? What are you talking about? But if I'm like, Yo amo mi pajon, I think it's powerful, and it's literally spread like wildfire.
It's true. I saw Yo amo mi pajon bumper sticker on the way back to the airport.
It's something that's relatable. It's something that it's in people's language, and it's also sending the message, and the message is still strong, to love yourself just the way you are.
And Carolina's message doesn't have an age limit. Even her mom has started to embrace her natural hair again. For the TransBorder unit, Mariana Dale, KJZZ News, Santo Domingo.
Mariana, as a journalist, you have a choice of stories you could be working on. Why hair?
Well, for one, girls aren't allowed to play in the MLB, so I felt like I had to do a story that really addressed the female population of the Dominican Republic. And I think it goes without saying for a lot of women, but I think in general we don't really talk about how you look, and the choices you make about how you present yourself can change the opportunities that are available to you in society, can change whether you can go to school, whether you get scholarships, whether you get jobs. And I think that if we don't talk about that, then we don't acknowledge that it's a problem, and we never get anywhere closer to changing it. And I just thought Carolina has a really strong message. And when she started her salon and her blog about 5 years ago, she was really the only one that was having that conversation in the Dominican Republic. And so I knew I really wanted to talk to her about that.
Before the broadcast tonight, we met many people in the room tonight in our town hall forum who are from the Dominican Republic, many of them talking about the hair stories. So this problem is not isolated to the island.
No, I mean, I think that bad hair, I mean, you had Beyonce talking about Becky with the good hair in her recent album. And so people that have a certain texture of hair, that's a judgment that's made in the U.S. as well as in the Dominican Republic. And so I think any woman of any texture has probably been made to feel bad about how they look in a certain way at some point in their life. And so that, I think, the message of acceptance is something that should be universal.
Thank you so much for the story. Kevin, we're going to change it up a little bit. We're going to go to our panel here, see if anyone has a hair comment.
As the person with the least amount of hair here, the only thing I will say is simply that women are allowed to play Major League Baseball, and I look forward to the day that we have a Dominican left-hander pitching for us who's a woman with curly hair.
There you go.
Now, Lisa, you're not going to let him get the last word.
Well, absolutely not. But it was fascinating because, you walk around the Dominican Republic and you see all these beautiful women, and, their hair is amazing. And you look at Beyonce, you look at Shakira. I always thought, I wish I had curly hair. So, I don't think it's one of those things that all women struggle with. So to hear this story was really, really wonderful. And I was with Mariana when we were in the car and saw that bumper sticker, and I thought, I got to get a picture, but we didn't quite get a good enough picture of that. But it was a really interesting story.
Maria, this is a big deal in the Dominican Republic.
It is. I knew what the story was about before I saw it, just when I saw the word pajón. Because, you spend a whole life with your mother saying, peínate ese pajón, muchacha. And it's a sign of being unkempt and not caring about your appearance. So all I would say is Dominicans know how to do hair. So if you travel, you're always looking for a hair salon anywhere where there is someone from the Dominican who can do your hair. So as much as here, I never go to the salon. I do my own hair. That's because I'm Dominican. When I go down there, I'm finding myself, the first time they say, you need to go, you'll like it. I'm like, yeah, I don't like people doing my hair and touching my hair. I do my own thing. No, go. Guess what? Now, last time I was there, actually with you guys, from the airport, I said, please take me to the salon to get my hair done. So it's just part of the culture. But what I think what Mariana was emphasizing about identity is connected a bit to what we were talking about during the immigration story, that even the choice of words to say is bad hair as opposed to curly hair, and that straight is good hair. When you grow up and that's what you hear, it doesn't take a whole lot of persuasion to go one way or the other, because there is an implication that something is not right with you if you are going using your natural style to be proud of who you are and your identity. So it's funny in a way, just because I grew up with the notion that you need to worry about your hair, but it's actually another form of racism, because if clearly curly is associated with dark, and that's what it is. It is better good if you are on the lighter side, and that comes with straight hair. So I think it's all back to the same conversation.
Thank you. Thank you. For our final story, we're going to cross to the other side of the island, to a small coastal town called Cabarete. Lonely Planet calls this one-time fishing and farming hamlet the adventure sports capital of the country, booming with condos and new development. But there's another side to Cabarete. Bachata music booms throughout the town and resonates all the way to Phoenix. Mariana went to Cabarete, and this is what she found.
A class of elementary school kids in Cabarete sit cross-legged on the floor, waiting for Juan Abel Martinez to take them through the bachata basics.
This instrument used in bachata is called the bongo.
In addition to the bongo, there are 2 guitars and a Dominican metal instrument called the guira. It kind of looks like a cheese grater. Martinez calls for volunteers to demonstrate the dance steps that accompany bachata. 2 young girls giggle as they step from side to side in a step-together pattern. For Martinez, to teach kids about music is to teach them about their heritage, their country.
Here in this country, there is no celebration that doesn't have music.
Martinez teaches through the Bachata Academy, a nonprofit that draws kids from nearby low-income neighborhoods and puts instruments in their hands. Kids like Adriel gather to practice weekly at an unassuming stucco building in Cabarete known as the Bachata House.
I like the emotion that you have to play it with.
The school started in 2013 and is the first of its kind in the Dominican Republic. Martinez is one of 3 teachers, and he's played percussion for decades.
Since I was born in bachata.
But for years, not all Dominicans celebrated bachata, and some still don't. Instead, merengue was praised as the fundamental Dominican style of music. Martinez says there was discrimination toward what was seen as low-class music.
In the genre, there were artists who had lyrics that were then seen as, bad or street music or music for cabaret.
But attitudes changed. Bachata stars dominate the Latin Billboard charts now and have even attracted the attention of stars like Drake. The Bachata Academy's founder, Benjamin D. Manil, wants to see an investment like the MLB makes in its Dominican baseball academies made in music.
So I think if you could have these intensive music programs that take advantage of the natural interest in music here, I think you could have some of the world's finest musicians coming out of the Dominican Republic.
At this point, Americans are more likely to know the names of U.S.-born bachata stars like Prince Royce and Romeo Santos. The genre's global appeal means you don't have to go very far to find bachata, even in Phoenix. Bachata Addiction at DeSoto Central Market is one of several Dominican-dance-themed nights that's popped up around Phoenix. The dance style has ridden the music's rise in popularity.
What we don't want is to look like we're in high school dancing.
The night's co-creator is Brandon Odom, a self-described white boy from Arkansas who first learned to dance while deployed to Iraq. When he moved to Phoenix 2 years ago, he found a Latin dance scene on the upswing. Now Bachata Addiction draws hundreds each month.
It transcends the culture, so it's not just like a Latino crowd or something like that. It's really a big mix of the population.
There are even a few Dominicans in the valley. Adrienne Moya helps teach the class some nights. She picked up bachata as a teenager, though without her parents' approval.
It was horrible. It was not classy. My parents were totally against it.
While she and other Dominicans had to push through their country and their family's own prejudices, the challenge in teaching the dance to others comes more from internal hang-ups.
I think a lot of people get there nervous in lessons and they think like, oh my God, people are looking at me.
Her advice?
Do not care if people are looking at you. Do not give one. Yes. And I always tell them when you don't care, that's when your true self comes out and you're free. And that's what it's all about.
For the TransBorder unit, Mariana Dale, KJZZ News, Phoenix.
We'll continue our discussion on bachata in just a moment. Just a reminder for those who are in our audience, if you have questions or comments about what you've seen this evening, please fill them out on a card, and Bill or Lou will get those to us. And if you are from the land of YouTube, we are at it's TransBorder at KJZZ.org. TransBorder at KJZZ.org. It's on the screen right now. Okay, this is the tough stuff. Maria, I know you're not a bachata fan.
That's not true. That's not true.
Argue with me. You're not. It's not true. I thought you said there's a big contention between the bachata people and the merengue people.
Yeah, but we dance to anything. As you heard, we love music, and someone said every celebration in the Dominican has music. You don't even need a celebration to have music. When I go and spend time with my mother, just the way that she walks, it's like she has music in her head. There's a little swing to that. I like bachata, but growing up, what we danced was merengue. And then as I got older, salsa, but we always thought salsa was Puerto Rican, not Dominican. So merengue was what we listened to and danced, every party. I would say the first time I was exposed to bachata as a legitimate form of music is through the compositions and music of Juan Luis Guerra. Has a whole album, Bachata Rosa, and I think that's probably about 10 years ago. So before Prince Royce and Santos, I would give the credit to Juan Luis Guerra for bringing that back as a great form of music, that Dominican music. And now, of course, is in, and I think when you go back, you probably hear more bachata than you hear merengue now. But growing up, it was merengue, and I am a great merengue dancer.
The record shows. The record shows. Lisa, when we were on the streets of Santo Domingo, and our reporters and editor and you and I encountered a wedding reception, everything just kind of stopped for a moment, and you found yourself magnetically attracted to this wedding reception. What happened there?
I wanted to crash the wedding. And so I made them all go with me, and there was actually a bodyguard standing out in front of the hall, and I said, please, por favor, podemos entrar? Can we just go and see the beautiful dancing? And he said, all right, go ahead. So I think he thought we were not very dangerous, but I watched them from the window, and they performed so beautifully for us at this wedding doing their bachata. So I took a little video, but it was amazing to watch. And so I promptly came home and signed my husband and me up for dance lessons so we could learn the bachata.
Okay, Josh, your bachata story.
I can't say that I have much, but in my role at the Diamondbacks, one of the things we do, we put together a media guide every year that the reporters use to kind of learn about players, including their likes and interests off the field. And so we used to, every time we'd go to guys in the off season and ask the Dominican guys, what can we put for your hobbies? Every kid from Arkansas is a hunter and fisherman, and then every kid from the Dominican loves salsa and merengue. And that was 15 years ago. And as time has gone on, you start hearing more and more guys talking about bachata. And then we would start, when you go to Chase Field and you see on the big screen, you see the players speaking on what our green screen. We usually have the room going with bachata music, and they come in and they've got this like vibe when they walk in, and it is the music in the Dominican truly just it just carries the day no matter where you go. It makes you move. I'm the self-proclaimed white boy as well, and I love it. You feel it, and it's the best.
So we'll see you at the DeSoto soon.
I will be there. I'm going to be signing up for lessons with Lisa and David.
Very good. Thanks for that report, Mariana. We have questions coming in from members of our audience, and feel free to respond. One comment is, during the segment, many of the interviews showed middle-aged persons. What is the sentiment regarding job loss, immigration, and the overall perception of others regarding the youth and the younger generation on the island?
I'll just make one comment. I'll tell you, one evening, Rodrigo, Mariana, and I took a walk. And what was so fascinating to me about Santo Domingo, where we were, was we stumbled on this huge park area, and there's a very thriving youth population in the Dominican Republic. I think it's a pretty young population overall, but from my perspective, it seems to me that, that 20-something age group is very strong in the Dominican Republic. And so I think it's going to be interesting to see over time how that transitions, how that transforms the country, because they seemed like they were having a wonderful time, and we really enjoyed watching them, just sitting there in the park watching them. But I think they have a lot of interesting opportunity there to make some positive changes. So I think that's a positive thing for them.
Thank you. We're going to get through as many of these as we can in the closing minutes we have. Here's a question from Luis Olivares to Maria. Can we know the name of the book that made you cry?
I was trying to think of that. I know the author is a Haitian writer, Dante Cat, and I can't remember it has the word bones is part of the title, but Dante Cat is the name of the author, and she's a Haitian. Do you know what it is? You're nodding.
Anyone know?
Are you thinking of it? Yeah.
Well, we'll have a discussion after the broadcast.
Yeah, we'll have to find it out, and then maybe you can post it on the.
Yeah, of course.
It's connected to a period of history during Trujillo, who was the dictator for 30 years in the Dominican. So we learn the Dominican version of that event, obviously from a Dominican lens, and it was the first time I had read what was going on the other side, and that's the premise of the book.
This is a related question. I'll stay with you. Is bachata popular in Haiti like it is in the Dominican Republic? Can bachata bring together Haitians and Dominicans?
I don't know that. I don't think so. But Haitians have Haitian merengue. So maybe instead of bachata, maybe it would be merengue. I think bachata is a very Dominican form of music. I've never seen a Haitian version of that.
Going to keep you on the spot here. What's the form of the government in the Dominican Republic? Is it a democracy? Who's the president?
It is a democracy. They have elections every 4 years, like we do here. I'm trying to think who.
Danilo Medina.
Danilo Medina just got reelected. Thank you. So I would say, let me say something else and connect it a bit to the youth in the Dominican. So when I was born in the 50s, so we had a dictatorship, Trujillo. And then all the years in the Dominican, before I came here, there was only one president I knew, and that was Balaguer, who got reelected. So growing up, I didn't know what a true democracy looked like until I came to the U.S., and I experienced that kind of freedom of expression and freedom of being. But the Dominican Republic today is very different from the Dominican Republic I grew up in. So if I talk to my nieces and nephews, and I say, I grew up with a lot of censorship, and people who wrote about the government were assassinated. I mean, those were the days. I still remember Orlando Martinez and the photo of this person dead on a sidewalk. My nieces and nephews wouldn't even know what I'm talking about. So one of the things that I noticed about what's going on there now in terms of the youth is their ability to speak up for their rights and to be very open about that on social media and otherwise is wonderful for me to see, because I did not have those opportunities when I was growing up. So I think that the sense of we own this place too, and we're going to fight for what we have is again, wonderful to see today.
And circling back, because you would expect Mariana Dale to have the answer to the question of the book, it's The Farming of Bones.
It is.
Farming of Bones.
Thank you.
By Edgewood Danticat?
Danticat.
Yes. We have time with just 1 minute remaining. Josh, this last one goes to you. From one of our listeners. What happens to players that make it to the U.S., make it to spring training, and later get released from your organization?
I think one of the things that's unique about, I guess, our education, and I don't know whether the question is specific to what happens to their education, but what the Diamondbacks, I think, how we differentiated, and I'll actually bring it all back together, oddly enough. We had a meeting probably 4 years ago with Danilo Medina, the president of the Dominican Republic, and our president, Derek Hall, asked him, what can I do to help your country? And he said, what we really need is our kids to be educated and not just try to be baseball players. And so we made this promise that we were going to educate them better than anybody else. And then we walked out of there, and he looked at us and he said, now we got to actually come up with the program we just told the president we were going to make. So what we did that differentiated is that once they are released, whether it's in the Dominican or if they come to the States, they get all the way to AAA and they just don't make it that last level, they can continue to get an education through the Diamondbacks that will pay for all the way through their high school education. So to answer, I guess, the question, what happens to them? Hopefully they go on to become educated. We actually have hired several to become coaches in our organization. We have front office workers who are from the Dominican. We have a staff of 20 plus, more than that actually, almost 40 scouts, coaches, administrators in the Dominican. And many of them stay in the game because they love the game for the same reason that I do. They want to work in it, and they want to go to a ballpark every day for a living.
Thank you. And thanks to our audience with the great questions. That concludes this town hall broadcast from the KJZZ TransBorder unit. Our thanks to the KJZ team for their support for the project, along with our colleagues from the Rio Salado College Conference Center and MCTV. Great work by our reporters, our editors, and our production crew. Special thanks to the Friends of Public Radio Arizona, Evelyn Kasuga, our chair, Lou Stanley, our executive director, because without our Friends organization, and that means most of you, this project could not have been possible. Thanks to our panelists, Dr. Maria Harper-Marinick, Lisa Urias, and Josh Rarich for trusting KJZZ to provide you with content, context, and experiences that I hope you will continue to share with our community. And finally, thank you to you, our live studio audience, and our viewers throughout the world. We hope that this hour has helped to create a better vision for how we can become citizens beyond our borders. So from the campus of Rio Salado College in Tempe, Arizona, thanks for watching. Good night and good day.